I mean, we know what happens when we give our freedoms up. We know. And now these people are so arrogant, they're coming out saying they're going to publicly drug the water supply to make us submit and give us shots to make us happy. I mean, holy mackerel, this is serious.
It's very serious. And one of the things that I really leaned pretty heavily on was some writings of a psychiatrist, 30 years, 40 years of experience in doing studies and so forth with a liberal mind. In fact, that's what this book is called. And basically, he says that these people are psychologically ill. And as a consequence, they cannot make a connection to reality. They are so far out in what they believe, that the belief is truth, that anything that connects it to reality is purely happen chance.
And that's how they can come out and say, we're setting up world government, but you people are kooks, no world government exists. Or, yes, we're storing your naked body images, but we're not.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. It's all kinds of disconnects. If you really look at what they're doing in Congress and what their ideas are, like, you know, really promoting Islam and so forth. Well, how can they promote Islam when the Islamic law and so forth is so abusive to women? There's a disconnect there, and yet they do it.
Well, the globalists want to destroy the dominant culture of Christianity.
Yes.
Real Christianity, not the fake Christianoid. And so they'll use anything that's from the outside to create divisions.
Absolutely. You cannot basically take over or change a inherent cultural belief without first tearing it down, and that's what they're in the process of doing it. And they're deconstructing the American way and putting something else in its place. And it's based on the writings and so forth of Jean Jacque Rousseau, a Frenchman in the 1800s, that led to the French Revolution and led to the beheading of many, many thousands of Frenchmen. And
your book talks about that. Long segment coming up. When we come back, let's talk about that, because Dr. Blaylock brought up the French Revolution, and that's really where a lot of this got formed. We'll talk about what these people plan to do. It's mass killing, of course. Okay, here's GCNlive.com, an Aaron Dykes article that just came out. It's also at infowars.com, but it's up at GCNlive.com. Army plans DNA blasting vaccines for mass inoculations during times of emergencies. They fire a laser into your flesh that embeds the nanotech viruses. They've taken them and made it synthetic viruses. You cannot make this stuff up. He has links directly to the Army, and it will reprogram the troops' brains. I mean, you're literally, they hold you down, laser you. It's over. I mean, we're in the 21st century. It's Buck Rogers, and the control freaks are coming. And it's gotten so crazy, it's hard for me to even believe. We had Dr. Russell Blaylock, top brain surgeon, on yesterday, and he said in his own words, he said it's worse than any nightmare science fiction. And he read document after document from the federal government where they admitted the fluoride gives us cancer and brain damage, where their own scientists say take it out. I mean, I love everybody. I love the children. I love our communities. And these eugenicists have admitted the global warming tax is to shut down our industrial society so we collapse and are under government control. And only Europe, the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand are under this. 160-plus other countries, China, India, and others, they have zero carbon taxes coming in. All of our jobs that we have left will leave. This is the stated program. It's the stated program of enslavement and bondage and poverty. And that's why this book is so important. Again, it's available at infowars.com. For those in America that still read, get it. Give it to people you know. It's so well written. I love things that just boil everything down. It's a full spectrum shotgun blast of info, well written, lots of quotes, lots of documents, lots of graphs. This is the kind of book I like because it's similar to a film. And, of course, Global Warming, Emerging Science Understanding, also available at Infowars.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139. And Endgame Blueprint for Global Enslavement covers all of this. Going back to Dr. Michael Coffman, Doc, continuing, you know, everybody I talk to who's really studied history understands that eugenics began 2,300 years ago with Plato. And he said, we, the hybrids, the elite, must kill everyone in Greece who's poor. And wars aren't killing them fast enough. And we need to train them not to fight back against us, so we'll give them sports as a way to be the new hero. We got to kill these people. You can read the quotes in Plato's Republic. And then if you study history, you see it come back and be picked up in the 1760s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And, of course, then they put Napoleon after that. It was a Rothschild takeover. They were going to have a 10-day-a-week work week. They were going to abolish the family. This is mainline history. They were talking about forced drugging people. They were saying they wanted to kill 80%. That number comes from the French Revolution. Kill 80% of the public. And so without me even prompting it, we talked about it yesterday, here's Michael Coffman telling you the same thing. Go over the French Revolution. It was the opposite of what our revolution was. And George Washington figured that out when he was president and spoke out against it. And the French then tried the Illuminati. He wrote letters about it. He wrote letters about them trying to overthrow the United States. And so ever since then, it is a group of sages or people that understand how humans operate who want to end the regular human order and replace it with their new world order. Doctor, go over it.
Absolutely. It is one of those heinous things that when you think about it, where you have people who are at the very top. Now, the vast majority of troops out there trying to implement this agenda don't really fully understand what they're doing. But the key people behind it, like occurred in the French Revolution, which was orchestrated by the Illuminati and the Jacobean Society and so forth, they basically used the Rousseau model. What the Rousseau model basically means the state is in control over the individual or sovereign over the individual, and everything stems from that. Once they did that, anybody who disagreed with them had their head cut off. And it was one of the most bloody revolutions in history of the period. Both Jefferson and Patrick Henry were excited about the French Revolution until they went over there and actually saw what they were doing. It had nothing in comparison to the American
And one
Revolution.
of them almost got killed. Some of our founding fathers got locked up.
Actually, Patrick Henry basically was scheduled to have his head lopped off if it wasn't for the intervention of Washington and the request to have him sent home, and Jefferson himself intervened. Otherwise, he would have been beheaded for all the outrageous, not really outrageous to us, but all that he was saying against the French Revolution.
And they were going to have a new calendar. They were going to end the family. The good news is it stalled out and failed.
It stalled out and failed, although we still have the socialist government that Rousseau is based upon installed in France. It just hasn't evolved.
That's right. Karl Marx and others, they were plagiarizing what the Luciferians, and by the way, that's mainline history, that the Illuminati out of Germany came over to France. That's what the famous Magic Flute Symphony's all about. And then, of course, they killed that composer when he did it. That was his last piece. I mean, this is, for those that haven't read mainline history, I mean, these were human-sacrificing, devil-worshipping mass murderers.
They really were, and of course that's been obliterated. If you look at the history books today that you might get in high school or college, of course that will not be in there. But if you look at some of the older history books, the ones that you can still get and buy, you will find a more accurate, just like Nazi Germany. If you look at Nazi Germany history in the current textbooks and so forth, you won't find anything about the religious beliefs of Hitler, the theosophical beliefs of Hitler, and what led him to believe that the Jews were a bad race and had to be eliminated. All of that stuff is now sanitized out of our history books. But if you go back to the more 100 years ago or even 50 years ago history books, what you will find is really what the truth is in that particular period of time. These people are evil. They're evil down to the very core. I think your description of them as being Luciferian is right on target.
Well, and then you look at eugenics in England in the 1850s. Yes. That then got set up in the U.S., and Hitler got his ideas from that, and it's the very same crowd.
It's the very same crowd. And it's still in the United Nations. It's still boiling just below the surface. You don't see it named as that anymore, but it's still there. The depopulation of the world, the whole effort is eugenics.
Well, now more and more they're coming out in the open and, calling for only having one child, having the state take over children. Let's talk more about what's in your book.
All right. Yeah.
I mean, go, because there's so much to cover. What else do you think is important to
Well, one of the things that is, I think, extremely important is to realize, and maybe this will get your attention because it gets your pocketbook, the $13.5 trillion deficit that we now have is directly responsible for this whole mentality, this whole ideology, which we now call progressivism or extreme liberalism, whatever you want to call it. It is the whole idea that government can solve all the problems in the nation and eventually the world. And as a consequence, these people do not believe that man has a downside, a dark side. They believe that all mankind will do his best if given the right opportunity. And, of course, that's fallacious. It's totally anti-biblical. Not only that, but it's never worked wherever it's been tried, and yet they continue to believe that man is inherently good. He does not have a human nature that will manifest itself in the form of greed or power-seeking or anything else. And all they need to do is to strive to create the perfect government, to create the perfect man. It does not work. And in the process, of course, you're going to create a power vacuum in which these very evil people can sweep right in and begin to control. And I go into that in quite great depth in the book and helping people to understand the type of thing that they're creating by allowing this extreme liberalism in the form of law and cultural practices, the whole concept of I can't think of it, but anyway, down along those lines.
Moral relativism?
Moral relativism is all right in there, and that they can create the perfect government. The reason we have poverty around the world is because of bad government, especially the United States. The United States is responsible for all evil done in the world. That's their belief. I mean, that's solid in their belief system. And as a consequence, they're doing all they can to tear down the constitutional republic that our founders created and build up a substitute government in its place that's tied totally into this Rousseau socialism and this idea that the perfect man can be created.
Well,
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. I want to go to some phone calls, and they'll be all over the map, but you can speak to any of these issues because you're a deep researcher. Dr. Michael Coffman is our guest, and, of course, the new book, Rescuing a Broken America, Why America is Deeply Divided, very important, and, of course, his film dealing with global warming, all available at infowars.com. Michael in Florida, thanks for holding. You're on the air. Go ahead, Michael, you're on the air. Okay, let's move on. Victoria in Montana, you're on the air.
Hi, Alex.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. I just want to say before I tell you real quick, because I know you only have 1 minute per person, we will not allow these fallen ones to turn us into mechanization man and cut off our connection to God with their chemical, biological warfare.
Yeah.
So I wanted to answer your question, what can we do? Well, we can dismantle Wall Street and the Federal Reserve criminal bankers and make them accountable like everyone else. No more double standards. Put them in prison. We could have people organize state to state, get the number of signatures needed on petitions to dump the criminal politicians. Then we could get out of the United Nations, which is nothing but another big criminal organization, and then we can strip the power and control from big corporations and foundations and end outsourcing our industries. We could end tax-funded mandatory public schools, which allow parents the freedom of choice then to truly and rightfully educate their children how they see fit and stop taking our money for it because it's nothing but a cesspool. I know because I was there for a little while and said no thank you. Prosecute politicians that fail to follow the law and replace them with leaders that will read bills and make sure that they're legal and good for the country and the people before they make them laws. Allow people to choose their senators and have the power to dump them as needed and take back our basic freedoms of speech, of press, of religion, of assembly, and our right to private property, which we really don't have right now anymore.
Beautifully said, Victoria. And I would just add for people that just tuned in, they're going, allow us to choose our senators at will. She means before the 17th Amendment of 1913, when the bankers took over, the state legislatures would vote. You vote for them, then they would vote, making the senator a creature of the state. That was meant to balance federal power.